bar was packed that night, buzzing with laughter, clinking glasses, and the hum of conversations overlapping one another. The air smelled of beer, sizzling fries, and the faint trace of cologne from the crowd squeezing through the narrow spaces between tables. It wasn't the kind of place where you'd expect trouble, at least not on a regular night, but something in the air felt different. A kind of tension, like the quiet before a storm. I had come here for a drink, nothing more, just a way to unwind after a long day. The music was good, the atmosphere lively, and for a while I let myself sink into the comfortable chaos of it all. But then I noticed them. 2 men standing near the far end of the bar, eyes locked in a way that told me whatever was about to happen wasn't going to end well. At first, I thought it was just a drunken argument. Maybe one of them had spilled a drink on the other, or maybe a misplaced joke had struck the wrong nerve. But as I watched, I realized this wasn't some petty disagreement. It was deeper, more personal. The taller guy, wearing a leather jacket, clenched his jaw, his hand tightening around the neck of his beer bottle. His opponent, a stockier man with a scar above his eyebrow, was already balling his fists, his face flushed red. Their voices were low, sharp, cutting through the noise of the bar in a way that made the people nearby start shifting uncomfortably. I wasn't the only one who noticed. The bartender, a lean guy in his 40s with a salt and pepper beard, was already eyeing them warily. A few regulars at the counter exchanged knowing glances. Everyone had seen bar fights before. No one wanted to be caught in the middle of one. The tension escalated quickly. The leather jacket guy took a step forward, closing the gap between them, his voice rising just enough for me to catch a few words. Something about owing respect and not backing down. The scarred guy didn't budge, his nostrils flaring as he let out a sharp breath. A chair scraped against the floor as someone nearby shifted away from them, sensing what was about to come. I could feel it too. One wrong word, one misplaced movement, and this place would turn into a war zone. And then, the front doors swung open. A massive figure stepped inside, his broad shoulders nearly brushing both sides of the doorway. The light from the neon signs outside framed him like some kind of larger-than-life character stepping straight out of a movie. Big Shaq. I swear, the entire bar paused for a moment. Not because they were expecting him, but because it's impossible not to notice when someone like him walks into a room. 7 feet tall, built like a fortress, and moving with a confidence that made it clear he didn't need to raise a fist to command attention. And he was walking straight toward the fight. The moment Big Shaq walked in, the entire energy of the bar shifted. Conversations dipped, the clatter of glasses seemed to pause, and all eyes subtly flickered in his direction. He didn't need to announce himself. His sheer presence did that for him. But the 2 men at the center of the brewing storm? They were too deep into their own battle to notice. The guy in the leather jacket shoved forward, knocking into the scarred man's chest with a force that sent a ripple of gasps through the nearby crowd. Drinks sloshed over the edges of glasses, and people instinctively moved back, creating a wider space around them. No one wanted to be caught in the crossfire. "You think you can just walk in here and talk like that?" Leather Jacket spat, his voice sharp with anger. His hands were clenched so tight around his beer bottle that for a second, I thought he was going to smash it against the counter. Scar grinned, but it wasn't the kind of smile that meant he was backing down. It was a challenge, a dare. "I don't think," he said coolly, cracking his knuckles. "I know." That did it. The bartender muttered a curse under his breath, already reaching for the phone beneath the counter, probably to call security or the cops. A few brave souls looked ready to step in, but no one really wanted to be the first to intervene. Then a chair scraped loudly against the floor. Shaq. He hadn't said a word yet. He just walked to an empty table nearby and pulled out a chair, the wooden legs dragging across the floor in a sound that sliced through the growing tension. Slowly, carefully, he lowered himself into the seat, folding his massive arms across his chest, and leaned back like he had just settled in to watch a show. That's when the two men finally noticed him. For the first time since the argument had started, Leather Jacket hesitated. His eyes flickered toward Shaq, recognition dawning, but pride kept him from stepping down. Scar wasn't fazed. If anything, he gave Shaq a quick glance and then smirked. "What, you here to referee?" Shaq didn't answer right away. He just stared. Not at Scar, not at Leather Jacket. At both of them, his expression unreadable. The weight of his silence was heavier than any punch. People were whispering now. A few phones had already come out recording the scene. The whole place was holding its breath, waiting to see what Shaq would do. Would he break it up? Would he say something? Then Leather Jacket did the dumbest thing he could have possibly done. He scoffed, rolled his shoulders, and turned back toward Scar, completely dismissing Shaq's presence. "I don't care who's watching," he muttered. "You and me, outside, now." Scar cracked his neck, adjusting his stance, looking more than ready. The space between them shrank. A second later, everything exploded. Just as Scar shifted his weight, preparing to swing, and Leather Jacket took a step back, getting ready to counter, a deep, rumbling sound rolled through the bar. Laughter. Slow, deliberate, and unmistakably coming from the massive figure sitting in the chair. Big Shaq was laughing. Not a chuckle, not a smirk. A full-bodied, belly-shaking laugh that echoed off the walls and made people stop dead in their tracks. The kind of laugh that makes you question if you just missed the punchline of the greatest joke ever told. The two men froze mid-motion, fists still clenched, eyes darting toward Shaq with confusion. "What the hell's so funny?" Leather Jacket snapped, his face contorting in irritation. Shaq leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, still grinning. "Man, look at y'all," he said, shaking his head. Two grown men fighting. Over what? A spilled drink? A bad joke? He gestured vaguely between them. Or is this one of those, "you disrespected me" type things? Scar's lips tightened, but he didn't answer. Shaq sighed dramatically and leaned back. "See, that's the problem. Y'all out here acting like life is a boxing match, like you got something to prove." He pointed at them both, his huge finger moving between them. "But let me ask you this, who wins?" The question hung in the air. Leather Jacket scoffed. "Who wins? The guy who walks away." Shaq's grin widened. "Nah, the guy who walks away without needing to fight." A few people in the crowd murmured. The bartender, who had been 1 second away from calling security, lowered the phone slightly, watching. Scar crossed his arms. "So what, you're saying we just back down?" Shaq shrugged. "You could fight, break some chairs, spill some drinks, maybe mess up this dude's pretty little jacket." He smirked at Leather Jacket, who instinctively looked down at his sleeves. "But what do you really get? Bragging rights, a black eye, a bar ban?" Leather Jacket's expression wavered. He knew Shaq wasn't wrong. Shaq stretched his arms out, towering even while sitting. "But if y'all really gotta prove something, let's do it right." Scar squinted. "What do you mean?" Shaq suddenly clapped his hands together, loud enough to make a few people jump. Then, with an unexpected burst of energy, he pushed his chair back, stood up, and pointed toward the old, slightly battered jukebox in the corner. "Dance battle." The entire bar went silent for a full 2 seconds. Then, someone burst out laughing. A wave of chuckles, then full-on laughter spread through the crowd like wildfire. Even the bartender cracked a grin. A few people clapped. The tension in the air shattered, just like that. Leather Jacket blinked. "You're joking." Shaq raised his eyebrows. "Am I?" He stepped forward, towering over them both, and then, out of nowhere, he started moving. A slight sway at first, then a shuffle of his feet. Then, with shocking agility for a man his size, he busted out a full-on dance move. The place exploded. Cheers, whistles, people shouting, "No way!" Phones were whipped out instantly, capturing the surreal moment of Big Shaq breaking up a bar fight by dancing. Even Scar, who had been locked in a battle stance just moments ago, was caught off guard. He looked at Leather Jacket. Leather Jacket looked at him. Then Leather Jacket smirked. "Hell no," he muttered, but there was no anger left in his voice. The fight was gone. The whole thing suddenly felt ridiculous. Scar exhaled and shook his head, laughing under his breath. "Man, I ain't about to dance." Shaq grinned. "Then you ain't got nothing to prove." Scar ran a hand through his hair, glanced at the crowd still watching, then at Leather Jacket. Something in the way Shaq handled the situation had drained the aggression out of the room. The fight felt stupid now. They felt stupid now. Leather Jacket sighed, rolling his shoulders. "Whatever, man, I'm done." Scar nodded. "Yeah, same." Shaq grinned wider. "Now that's what I'm talking about." And just like that, the fight was over before it ever really began. The tension had evaporated. The fight that seemed inevitable only moments ago had dissolved into laughter, disbelief, and an unforgettable story that everyone in the bar would retell for weeks, maybe even years. Leather Jacket and Scar, once locked in a battle of pride and aggression, now stood awkwardly amid a crowd that had just witnessed something completely unexpected. The air was lighter, the mood shifted, and instead of a brutal showdown, the night had taken a turn towards something far better: perspective. Shaq, standing tall and relaxed, clapped both men on the back like they were old friends. "Y'all good now?" Scar exhaled through his nose, nodding. "Yeah, man, we're good." Leather Jacket stuffed his hands into his pockets, shaking his head with a half-smile. "Still can't believe that just happened." Shaq smirked. "Believe it, you're going to laugh about this tomorrow." The bartender, still standing behind the counter with a relieved expression, let out a breath. "Man, I thought I was going to have to call the cops." Shaq turned to him with a grin. "Nah, no need for all that." He gestured toward the jukebox. "But I wouldn't say no to another track." That got a round of applause from the crowd. Someone ran up and pressed a button, and a classic old-school hip-hop beat started playing. A few people started moving to the rhythm, the tension fully replaced with energy, relief, and amusement. Scar and Leather Jacket hesitated for a moment, then exchanged a glance. Without a word, they both shook hands. It wasn't a dramatic, over-the-top moment. Just two men realizing how close they had come to throwing punches over something so ridiculously insignificant. One of the regulars chuckled. "Man, if Shaq wasn't here tonight, we'd be cleaning up broken glass right now." Someone else added, "Forget that. There'd be bodies on the floor." Shaq let out another laugh. "See, that's the thing. Y'all too quick to throw hands when you don't need to." He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. "You know what I learned a long time ago? The biggest man in the room ain't the one who fights the hardest. It's the one who knows when not to fight at all." That one sentence hit different. People nodded. The bar quieted down for a second. As if everyone was letting the words sink in, Scar, still rubbing the back of his neck, muttered, "Yeah, I guess you got a point." Leather Jacket exhaled. "Ain't worth it." Shaq smiled. "Damn right it ain't." The night moved on. Drinks were poured, conversations shifted, and the incident slowly became just another crazy story in the long history of that bar. But something had changed. Scar and Leather Jacket didn't go back to being best friends or anything, but there was mutual respect now. No more ego, no more bravado, just two guys who had been seconds away from making a stupid mistake, but got saved by a man who knew that strength isn't just about size, it's about control. As Shaq eventually made his way to the door, a few people clapped him on the back. Others gave him nods of appreciation. One guy, shaking his head in amazement, said, "Man, I've seen fights, but I've never seen one get stopped like that." Shaq just grinned. Gotta keep people on their toes. With that, he stepped out into the night, leaving behind a bar full of people who had just learned something valuable without even realizing it. And as the door swung shut behind him, the bartender chuckled to himself, wiping down the counter. "Big Shaq," he muttered. "Ain't nobody doing it like him.